reading for this week. The first thing that I have on the lesson plans for this week is to complete the skill check 8. And it's a reading passage with some questions, and I'd really like you to complete that because that's like an end of the year assessment to see how you're doing with reading in second grade. Just because it seems easy doesn't mean that you should rush. We've had that discussion before, so please take your time. Your lesson today is lesson 143. It's the first part of Granny Nell's Dulcimer. Your targets are: I can infer the emotions of characters. I can draw conclusions based on clues. That means that you're going to hear some things or read some things that are happening, and then you have to make a decision about the events that have happened. I can identify elements of setting, place, and time. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is review contractions. Now, remember, contractions are formed when we take two words and we crash them together so hard that some letters pop out. And in that missing space, or where the letters pop out, we're going to put an apostrophe. Now, if you have printed off this attachment, you can complete it. It's a fill in the blank. But I am more interested in knowing that you know how these contractions were formed. So I want to look at the word I'm. If you look, I'm has a base word, I. So the first word in I'm is I. That leaves apostrophe M. Well, where did that apostrophe M come from? It came from am. So we take I am, bang it together, the A pops out, and I am becomes I'm. It's just a shorter way of saying it. Whose. What base word do you see in whose? Well, I see the word who. So my base word is who, and that leaves apostrophe S. Now, apostrophe S has a couple of jobs. Sometimes it shows possession. It shows that something belongs to someone. But in a contraction, the apostrophe S comes from the word is. Whose means the same thing as who is. Hadn't. I see a base word. That word is had. And that leaves in apostrophe T. Now, what word came from in apostrophe T? The word not. So hadn't means the same thing as had not. I'd. I see a base word, I. Now, apostrophe D can mean two things, and you have to decide, based on the reading, what it means. I'd can mean I had, or it can mean I would. The way that you're going to use it today, I believe it means I had. I'll, the base word is I. You have apostrophe LL. And apostrophe LL comes from the word will. So I will means the same thing as I'll. Okay, here we have its. My base word is it. That leaves apostrophe S. Apostrophe S comes from is. It is forms the contraction its. That's, the base word is that. And again, you have apostrophe S, and it comes from is. So that is forms the contraction that's. We're, the base word is we. You have apostrophe RE, and that comes from the word are. So we are forms the contraction we're. What's, the base word is what. Apostrophe S, again, is. So what is forms the contraction what's. Now, on the attachment, your job is to use these words in the box to complete each sentence. It's important you be able to use them. It's also important that you understand how they were formed. Okay, for part 1 of Granny Nell's Dulcimer, and this section is titled The Dulcimer, your sight words or your vocabulary words are balance, instrument, motion, and plucked. And these happened in the past because of ED. I'm going to read some sentences, and I want you to decide what the meaning of our sight word in that sentence is. So number 1 is Rico plucked the strings as he played his guitar. If he plucked, I've got some people who play guitar like Jacob and Maya who know that if you pluck, it means removed, picked, or turned. If you plucked the strings, what did you do to them? You picked them. You pulled them with your fingers. All right, mother motioned to her children to follow her. If your mother motioned, did she blink her eyes, move her hand, or wave goodbye? If mom wants you to follow her and she does this, she is moving her hand. She's telling you to come on. She might even do this one. If she does that one, you might really, really want to think about what you may have done. The next one, the clown lost his balance and fell off the horse. Is balance hat, shoe, or footing? If he lost his hat, that wouldn't make sense. Lost his shoe or lost his footing. See, I was trying to use process of elimination because I don't think some of you may know what footing is. But your hat wouldn't make you fall off your horse. Your shoe wouldn't make you fall off your horse, but your footing would. Your footing is how you keep your feet in the saddle stirrups to keep you in place. During chapel, the student played an instrument. Is an instrument an object used to make music? Is it a tool used by a dentist to clean teeth? Or it is a tool used to measure temperature? Now, all three of those are definitions for instruments, but which one of those would you use in chapel? And I think you should say an object used to make music. Now, if you will look at your textbooks on page 132, there's some information about folk music, and I'm not going to tell you a story. It's so small that I'm not sure that I can see it. So I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. And it says, folk music. Folk music comes from many different countries around the world. Each country has folk music that is different from the folk music in other countries. The words of the songs tell something about that country or the people who live there. Folk music can be enjoyed by anyone. Adults teach their folk songs to their children, so the folk songs are often shared among families for many years. Folk music can be played on an instrument or sung. The dulcimer is one of the instruments that can be used to play folk music. Now, it's like fairy tales and fables are stories that were passed down from generation to generation to generation, because back in the old days, books were very expensive and not everybody told them or had them. So they told folk tales by word of mouth. Well, folk music is the same thing. It was music that was told from generation to generation or sang from generation to generation. Now, I did want to show you a couple of things. The first one is a dulcimer, what a dulcimer is. A dulcimer is a musical instrument that's similar to a guitar in that it has strings and you pluck them, but it lays on your lap. So you have to balance it on your lap. And I'm going to show you a little bit of this video from my phone so you can see how it works.
Dulcimer is the easiest stringed instrument to play. This little instructional sequence is going to show you how to play and get you started. So the dulcimer has 3 strings, basically. If you have a 4-string dulcimer, you probably have a doubled string right here. And the best way to get started is to take your right hand, rest it on the side of the dulcimer, and pluck the string that's closest to you. Just pluck it. See if you can do that without looking at it. So we have your right hand's plucking, and you can do that without looking at it. And now your left hand is your push-down hand. That's the one that makes the different notes. You make notes by pushing down on that first string, next to, but not on top of, one of these shiny bars. They're called frets. You can see I put some labels on some of these. The 3rd space, the 5th space, the 7th space, and the 10th space. And when you press down, you want to be next to the fret. If you get too close, you're going to muffle the sound. If you get on top of the fret, you're going to muffle it. And if you get too far away, you're not going to get a clean sound. So I tell people leave space for an ant to walk between your finger and the bar you're pressing next to. Now that you can play notes on the dulcimer, your next step is to play a song, a simple song that you know pretty well by ear. You can figure it out. Mary Had a Little Lamb starts here on 5. Or Row, Row, Row Your Boat starts on 3. Or Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star starts on 3 and jumps up to 7. Then it just comes down the ladder, step at a time. And lots of other simple songs.
Okay, so that's a dulcimer, and that's how you play it. It has fewer strings than a guitar, and you balance it on your lap. You pluck with one finger, and you change the pitch with the other finger. Now, I also want to show you or let you hear a folk song. This is a song that my best childhood friend Wendy's mom used to sing to us all the time, called Frog Went a Courtin'. And this is a folk song, so give me a second and let me get past this commercial, skip ad, but this is an example of a folk song. And you may know this.
Froggy went a courtin' and he did ride Froggy went a courtin', he did ride, sword and pistol by his side Well, he rode down to Miss Mousie's door. He rode down to Miss Mousie's door, where he'd often been before. He took Miss Mousie on his knee. He took Miss Mousie on his knee, said, Miss Mouse, will you marry me? I'll have to ask my Uncle Rat. I'll have to ask my Uncle Rat, see what he do say to that.
Okay, now I'll add the link into the videos when I send this through for you guys next week. But that's an example of a folk song, and that's a song that was passed down from generation to generation, just like Wendy's mom used to sing that song to us all the time when we were growing up. And you saw the dulcimer and how it sounds. So the music that was with Froggy Went a Courtin' sounds similar to the dulcimer. I don't believe that it was, but you could hear the twangy sound to it. Now, you guys are going to read Granny Nell's Dulcimer, the first section, and it begins on page 133. If you look at the pictures, do you think that this is a fantasy or a realistic fiction? And the answer is it's realistic fiction. There are things in it that could happen, but it's a pretend story, okay? The reason we think that it's realistic fiction is because the characters look like people you might see in real life. Their actions are what real people might do, and the setting is where real people might have lived. How would you describe the setting or the place? And when I say setting, I don't just mean the place, I also mean the time and history of this story. Do you think it happened now? Do you think it happened long ago? Do you think it happened in the summer, the winter? What season do you think? And I think if you look at the pictures, you know that they live in the woods. It almost looks like they're in the mountains, and it's in the summer. Granny Nell's Dulcimer is a realistic fiction story set in the Appalachian Mountains, which is a mountain range in the eastern United States. Folk music was often played on the dulcimer in the mountain community where the story takes place. The dulcimer is a musical instrument used to play folk music. Who in the story owns the dulcimer? Granny Nell does. I want you to think about the following question as you read this section. Why is Granny Nell's dulcimer special? And after you read through page 138, there are some questions on your parents' lesson plans that I want you to answer, and then I want you to complete pages 317 and 318. Your page 317 is on possession, and remember, I want to look and make sure before I misspeak. We are skipping a couple of pages. Remember, when you show possession, you add an apostrophe S to a word, and that means that it belongs to someone. And then 318 will be on the use of contractions, okay? So you're going to read section 1, Granny Nell's Dulcimer, answer the questions on your parents' lesson plans, and then do the 2 workbook pages today, all right? And I will add those links in case you want to know more about playing the dulcimer and more about folk music. You guys have a great day of reading.